Hello, fellow parents and educators. Thank you for joining me at Education Evolution, where we are disrupting the status quo in today's learning models. We talk about present-day education, what's broken, who's fixing it, and how. I'm Dr. Maureen O'Shaughnessy, your host and founder of Education Evolution and the Microschool Coalition, where we are fiercely committed to changing the narrative, to reimagining the education landscape and creating learning that serves all children and prepares them to thrive. Hi, Meg. It is so good to have you on Education Evolution.
Hey, Maureen. I'm happy to be here. What a great day.
Yes. And listeners, today I'm chatting with Meg Ormiston, an educational change agent, technology whiz, and author of the Now Classroom series. And those are lessons that connect technology to key outcomes and prepare students to succeed in the 21st century. I can't wait for her to share with you some of how she leverages students' natural curiosity, how she uses technology as a key for learning, and a little bit more. So Meg, let's get started.
Yay, I can't wait, Maureen.
So yesterday, you sent me an email and I got so excited about your vision of the Now Classroom model. So I had some other questions of mine, but tell us about this wonderful learner-centered model.
Well, I've been working with 26 co-authors and we produced 5 books called the Now Classroom series. And there's a K2, 3-5, 6-8, 9-12, and a leadership book. And our vision is that we would move from a teacher-driven classroom over to a student-empowered, a student-driven classroom where students set goals. They create, they build, they're motivated, they're excited. And it's less of the teacher standing in front of the room and more of students creating. And we call that the Now Classrooms.
Love it. What are some of the specific elements of this model?
It really depends on technology to kind of put everything together where students are constantly collaborating, communicating with all different types of technology, where they're moving fluidly from maybe a Google Doc over to a Google Form, over to another type of technology where they feel very comfortable moving between all these pieces. And it's less teacher driven and it's more goal driven. Student knows exactly where they're doing, where they're going, where their group's going. It's really exciting.
I love that it's student driven. Talk to me about students and curiosity and how that works.
Well, it definitely depends on the student, their interest. We really try to get into their interest and then try to embed some of the, let's say, for example, reading, writing, speaking, listening skills, but kind of around their passion instead of around the teacher curriculum and the teacher passion is really getting to their, what excites them.
That makes perfect sense. We all learn better when it's something that we're engaged in and interested in. I read a little bit about the article that you're putting out, and micro teams came up. Can you talk about how you use that within the Now Classroom?
Yeah. Okay. So Maureen, the micro teams is kind of new because what I did is I studied the kind of the research that was coming out of the COVID-19, the schools that closed like 7 weeks before we did. And then it started, I'm in the Chicago area. And so as it started to come this way is like what we were doing well with kids and what was not working with remote learning. And really what I saw is the isolation of these kids. I was working almost every day with a group of 5th grade students, not far away from my house. And I was, would drop in and I'd work with them, and the most engaged group I've ever worked with, self-starters, motivated. And when we got into remote learning, they shut down. It was like so sad. It was like heartbreaking. I'm like, come on, let's do this. Let's try this. I worked with this teacher. We tried so many things, and these kids just shut up. I think it was the isolation. And
Yep.
you know what I mean? And the lack of that small group interaction, like let's work together kind of thing. That's where
Right,
I get.
right.
Yeah, it was, Maureen, it was painful to watch.
I experienced the same thing here in Washington State. Some of our kids were doing fine, but some of our kids were just crashing and burning without contact with their peers. And we were trying scavenger hunts and share your pet and all kinds of ways to make it engaging. But isolation has been a huge issue for our learners. So what are micro teams?
So what I'm thinking is, and so I'm making this up as I'm watching this, just these kids just go into a hole. A micro team would be a small group of students, 3 to 5 students in a small group, all nested under the classroom teacher. So the classroom teacher, depending on their class size, would have, 8 to 10 teams or whatever the case may be. And these students would be kind of a team that would kind of march through the curriculum together, work together. If they can be face to face, yay, their team can be there. If they can't be face to face, they have that small community of learners. And I think that's a huge piece we missed. We were so focused on teaching and getting art, music, and PE in there and all those other things that we forgot about the social piece and that relationship piece with the kids.
That makes really good sense. And it reminds us it doesn't have to be the teacher doing all of the connecting, that kids will naturally then connect with people in their group and check in with them and care about them. So we're actually helping our students help each other.
Exactly. And where the students honestly are doing more of the cognitive lifting, where they're learning how to learn. And that's really what we should be doing with our schools, is helping the kids get ready for their future. So for example, I'm growing heirloom tomatoes this summer.
Nice.
I'm just having a blast, because who knew that every heirloom tomato has a story? And and it's amazing. I have a mortgage lifter in my garden this summer, and it was the seeds are from the 1930s. And during the Great Depression, he sold tomatoes for $1, and he was able to lift his mortgage. Hilarious.
Whoa.
I know every tomato in my garden has a hilarious story, and so I'm just loving that. And what we want to do is we want to get that to students, get that love of learning, of let's explore, let's go deeper, let's do this, that's what we want. That's what I hope for students.
So how does this look different than a teacher-directed classroom? Paint a picture for us of what we would see if we walked into your now classroom.
Okay. What I see, there's definitely a teacher in the room. Yay. That's great. There's a teacher in the room, but every group of students knows exactly what they're doing. You can walk up to any student and they can say, here's our path. Here's where we're going. We really love to do math. So we're going a little faster in math, where we don't love the book we're reading, but we're doing this, where every student group is independent. They know what they're doing, they're mission focused. And the teacher is orchestrating everything and watching everybody and all their personal goals and things like that. But the students really own the learning. And I'm hoping that they're stretching and they are going to, do the work, we'll say, that the teacher has asked them to do, but to go beyond that, and to go into things that they're interested in, they're passionate about. I'm really hoping we can get students re-engaged in current events and real projects that make a difference. I always look at the Global Goals Project from the UN that is really focused on real issues that impact our entire world, and get students involved in that kind of thing.
That sounds wonderful. And in real life, then kids aren't saying, when will I ever use this? And why is this relevant? Because they're picking it and because it ties into their reality. how would teachers start to track if kids are in all these different places and they're still supposed to meet competencies and they're going on their passions? How does a teacher even begin to manage something like that?
And that is a key, is the whole management piece. And that is the part that I'm really working on. And it's the same time I'm working on that, developing student leaders. So every single micro team has a captain. And this is a leader of the group that is the direct report to the teacher. And so let's say the group is 3 to 5 students. That captain every single day sends a quick Google form, nothing fancy, just a quick Google form to the teacher, letting them know where they are, how they're doing, how they're progressing, and any issues that maybe they're picking up from their group members, whatever it may be. And that is really, that captain piece is how the teacher is going to manage everything.
Oh my gosh. So many more resources pop up if you have all of these captains helping out. And I'm just thinking, I have a young adult daughter that's a supervisor now in her job. And where in our K-12 system do we give kids the opportunity to be helping support others and gain those supervisor skills? This sounds like it's giving them an important life skill that they rarely get in school.
Maureen, I totally agree with you. And that whole leadership piece, we make like fake leadership opportunities through service clubs and things like that. I'm talking real, authentic, and it's immediate because we don't know what the fall is going to bring. And it puts a leadership piece in where it's really needed. And hopefully then we won't have kids fall through the cracks. We won't have kids not showing up. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to be back and then a week later or that overnight things are going to happen. It's that leadership piece. It's that connection. It's that peer piece that I totally think we totally missed.
I completely agree. And I know at Lead Prep at our micro school, there are times where I turn to kids and they reach out to a student that might be shutting down and not connecting with the teachers. And our kids are so empathetic, and it gives them a chance to practice in context, being empathetic, taking in other perspectives, figuring out how to engage people, all of these soft skills. And they're doing it because they care about their classmates. So for them, it feels very real, as opposed to that once a month nice service project, which is a service, but it's in isolation and it doesn't get to connect the whole heart in the same way. I think you're onto something really important, Meg.
Well, I've been noodling with this and just watching that group. And what we would do is every morning I would join the teacher. So this is a 5th grade class. And they, in the classroom, they're going here. They could run the green screen. And not only were they doing their own work, they were supporting the work of all of the rest of the building. There were 900 kids in this building, and they were reaching out. They made a club. The students made a club. I kind of nudged them maybe slightly.
Just a little.
Okay, nudged them slightly. And I said, what if we became a service club to the school? And what if you helped all your teachers, your former teachers, and you said, hey, we can come in and help you do some great technology projects. The teachers were so excited. And these kids would come down in groups of 3, 5, and they would just go through a kindergarten classroom and they would support the kids creating projects. The 5th graders loved it. The kindergartners loved it. And the teachers had products that they could share and show what is happening. And they became a service organization. So this is the group that we had. And they won this major award in their school district for innovation and service and all this stuff the day before school was let out. And then we had a beautiful little ceremony. It was awesome.
That is sweet. Then that they got recognition for this hard work. And you're also upper elementary, middle school are such formative years. They're starting to identify themselves as helpers, as caregivers, as contributors. So as they're forming that identity, whoa, they're really getting some cool pieces of their identity in place. So it's a win-win for long-term gains for them.
Now, Maureen, I totally agree with you, but the problem was then they got into that environment, that one-way, flat, Zoomy environment, and they all just sat back. Many of them were in their bedrooms by themselves, kind of locked away, and they just lost their zest, their excitement. And that's where I've really spent months working on these micro teams that I think we wouldn't have lost it if they had 1, 2, 3, or 4 friends that said, hey, come on, we can't be together, but we can be together. That's where really the micro teams came from, is their joy, their zest. They lost it all. And I just really feel the micro teams could bring everybody back together.
I can't wait for you to have this article out and more on this topic, because it's going to be, I think, the missing piece. I'm hearing of some really great ideas if we're hybrid or remote, but I haven't heard anybody talk about how we leverage students and how we create teams so that social isolation is countered in an ongoing way. So Meg, you're on to something really important.
Well, but you're already doing a lot of that kind of work. Tell me, kind of compare and contrast the micro school to the micro team idea.
We are tiny. So already we have that connection. I think for us, we could get more intentional. We shift groups depending on the subject, and we could get more intentional in having kind of base micro teams. They may not stay together for every project because we have our students all day, but sometimes they break off and do middle or high, or they do independent math. So we have a lot of those pieces built in, and we're a really strong sense of community. But we could even be stronger when we're remote if we had little micro groups, teams of 2 or 3, really making sure they're taking care of each other and having a chance to practice that. We don't have the problem of having a huge 5th grade classroom of 30 kids, since our whole micro school has 30 kids. But I think refining that and being very intentional in that would help us, even as a micro school.
I totally agree. And I love your concept of what you're doing. And I think it's so critical. And I really do hope that this time of turmoil is going to have everybody kind of rethink things. You've already rethought, and you're already doing with your micro schools, doing such great things. And I love that. I would love to see more of that going on in our public schools.
Yes, school within a school. Where we have that, it's usually for alternative kids that are falling through the cracks, or a specific kind of gifted kid. But if we had options, I know my local school district has choice schools, lottery schools that are tiny. The waiting lists are always off the charts. So it's like there's such a demand. So we need to create a supply that has smaller, more communal, where kids aren't lost, has more options in the school system. And hopefully this whole pandemic is helping us move ahead. I was talking to a friend who said, we've just shown education, they say, can't change. We've just shown we can turn on a dime and head a different direction. So we have no excuses. We need to keep changing and not revert back to the broken pieces that didn't work 20 years ago, let alone now. So I'm optimistic, and I bet you're optimistic too.
Oh, absolutely, Maureen. I think your model, this micro teams idea, is just getting that focus onto the students, and that the leadership, that we have so many kids that are sitting in our classrooms today, and in what I call my teacher-driven classrooms, that are just bored. They're not using their talents. And I just really think that if we could get them into the smaller groups, I really think these kids could do wow things. They could get their work done as we're going to prescribe, the math, reading, everything else. But then they could do so much more and give back to their communities and solve real problems that mean something to them.
They completely could. And then we wouldn't have this issue of engagement levels dropping from 5th grade on through middle school. There's this decline, and it's horrible, and it's been documented. And engagement, when these kids are so disengaged by secondary, I hear kids say, yeah, I just kind of play on my phone or daydream, and I make sure I take the tests and turn in homework. But they've tuned everything out, and it's something, they feel like school is something to survive and get through, and there's no joy. And how is that preparing them? How is that using their gifts fully? So I think micro teams and smaller and letting kids be leaders is where we need to be heading.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, what is the role of school? Isn't it to get them ready for their real world? And their real world, just like your daughter, is a leadership role. And we need to build that into our day. It's not about schools being focused around the teachers in the specials, and how we have to schedule everything. It really needs to be focused on the students and the learning.
I couldn't agree more. Meg, I have one final question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, creative change agent and edtech guru, if I gave you the Change Education for the Better wand and granted you one wish, what would you wish for our schools and our learners?
Ooh. Oh, goodness. Okay, that's a big one.
I know.
I'm going to take a stand. I wish that everyone had kept up and caught up and knew all of the great educational technology tools before this happened. What I really saw in this is that I really saw, wow, you had all these opportunities to learn, teachers, and you chose not to come to different sessions, or I don't want to do that, or I'll do that next year. And all of a sudden, there was no next year. It was like we were thrown into this, and a lot of teachers were not prepared. And that meant their students were not actively engaged. And so if we could all kind of take a reboot and just say, okay, to be a professional today, I need these skills, and take our time between now and fall to all kind of brush up on our skills. I think that would help so much. But it's all a shift from being teacher focused. That's how I was trained, hold up something and say,
right,
well, make one of these. And to change from teacher focused to students as leaders. They can do it if we stop talking.
That's the caveat. Yes. Meg, this is so great. I love that you are working on very specific ways that students can own their learning and how we can move away from that old teacher-directed model, which is such passive learning for our students that they tune out. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You are so welcome, Maureen. It was so exciting to connect with you, learn more about your work, and then kind of think about how could we change? And this is an exciting time in education. I totally believe that.
I agree with you completely. Thanks again for joining us.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Meg is such a dynamo. I always feel inspired listening to her. In her ed tech consulting, she has really transformed classrooms, kindergarten through 12th grade. Check out the show notes because she is sharing her educational arrow graphic, and that talks about the continuum from having a teacher-driven classroom all the way over to having a now classroom. So it has teacher-driven, then teacher-directed, teacher as leader, teacher as activator, and then the now classroom. And I think that challenges all of us to think, where are we on that continuum and where do we want to be? And then she has 5 different categories: who owns the learning, instruction, assignments, assessments, and technology use. So I think that that's a great resource for all of us to have. Also, in regard to technology, I think we sometimes think that this generation is just amazing with technology. And that's not true. They are amazing with the apps and the technologies that they prefer, but that doesn't mean that they know how to attach a document to an email or navigate through docs and sheets or through slides and Google Sites and whatever the platform is. It doesn't mean that we should assume that they are great with all technology, and we want them to have technology as a tool, just like a pencil that they can pick up and use to serve their purpose. And also in the show notes is Meg's top 10 toolkit of educational technology for teachers. Her magic wand was poignant. If we were current on EdTech, we would have been able to more seamlessly navigate the pandemic. We have to stay current on educational technology, on education in general. A piece that's concerning me about the pandemic and learning is so many conversations are focused on how are we going to distance people? Are we going to have plexiglass desk dividers, face masks, or face shields? And yes, these are important, but we also need to be talking about learning. I have been on so many webinars in the last 3 months, and I'm including in my show notes the first webinar that knocked my socks off in terms of addressing learning for our students. And Nuzella hosted it, and Heidi Hayes Jacobs, who is a curriculum guru that I've been fangirling for decades. She was the guest, and she is as powerful as ever. Back in the day when we were doing curriculum mapping, she was really big on horizontal and vertical and gaps and overlaps and really making curriculum work. And her webinar is Making Hard Choices, Readjusting Your Curriculum for Reopening School. Please check that in the show notes. I can't wait to go back and listen to it again. I feel like I have more to learn from her. So we're really grateful that Meg came on and sparked us and reminded us to focus on the learning and on making it student-driven and empowering students, whether we're face-to-face, remote, or in a hybrid. I know how challenging it is to make changes inside your own school or community. I've spent years working with schools around the world on creating learner-centered programs, and it always struck me how much schools were able to get done with the right tools and guidance. If you're ready to make changes like this in your own school, let's talk and put together an action plan. Visit educationevolution.org/consult for a free 15-minute call, and let's see if we're a good fit for more work together. Education Evolution listeners, you are the ones to ensure we create classrooms where each student is seen, heard, valued, and thriving. We need you. Let's go out and reach every student today. I'd be so grateful if you'd head over to your podcast app and give a great rating and review if you found this interview valuable. Thank you for listening. Signing off, I am Maureen O'Shaughnessy, your partner in boldly reimagining education.